Afghanistan, 1998. 10-year-old Parvana goes every day with her father to the marketplace where he works because he has a bad leg and he needs help carrying his things. What he does at this large outdoor marketplace is help people to read and help people to write. That's because not everybody in Afghanistan at the time could read or write. The literacy rate wasn't so great. And so maybe somebody has gotten a letter from his son and needs help reading it. Parvana's father will read it to him. Or maybe somebody needs help filling out a form. Parvana's father is there to help for a small fee. Parvana is very lucky because she gets to sit next to her father and watch him read and watch him write. And as a result, she knows how to do both of those things, which doesn't seem like that big of a deal. After all, she's 10, right? She should know how to read and write. Not in Afghanistan in 1998. A group called the Taliban was in charge at the time, and they set all the rules. And the Taliban has very strict rules about women and girls. They're not allowed to be educated, and they can't read or write. And if they break these rules, they could get arrested or maybe even worse. They're also not allowed to leave the house without a male chaperone. And so again, Parvana is lucky because she gets to go out every day with her dad. Her sister, her mother, they're not so lucky. They're almost always at home. At the beginning of the story, the Taliban comes to Parvana's house and arrests her father because they accuse him of reading books that they do not allow people to read. And so now he's gone. They have no idea when or if he's ever going to be coming back. They're obviously terrified and sad, and they're desperate because they can't leave the house. And even to get water, they have to walk a quarter of a mile to the well. As the days pass, they grow increasingly desperate. They need water, they need food, they need money. And so they come up with a plan. They will dress Parvana up as a boy. She knows how to read and write. They will send her to the marketplace, and there she will provide the same service for a small fee as her father was providing. It's a good plan if it works. She can make money and bring home food and water for the family. But if it doesn't work, if Parvana gets caught, it could be a matter of life or death. The Breadwinner is by Deborah Ellis. It's actually the first in a trilogy about Parvana, and it's a short book, as you can see. Almost everybody who reads this first book comes in and asks for the next two. Absolutely excellent. Try The Breadwinner by Deborah Ellis. The main character, Daniel, in O.C. Daniel by Wesley King, has a secret. He doesn't want anyone to know his secret, and he doesn't want anyone to know how weird he is. Specifically, he thinks he's weird because of the zaps. The zaps are things that happen in his brain. He's not sure if they're imaginary or not, but it sort of feels like getting attacked by a Dementor in Harry Potter or something. He gets these zaps every now and then, and his heart also races, and he panics. There are things he can do to prevent the zaps, or at least keep them from happening too often. Okay, here's some examples. He can tie his shoelaces in a very particular way. Left shoelace over right shoelace always. He can turn the light switch on and off exactly 10 times before he goes to bed. He can fold his towels in neat little squares. He can line up cups of water on the counter and make sure all the water is at exactly the same level. Oh, and as far as the number 6, Daniel tries to never write the number 6 because that will definitely bring on zaps. He is having some trouble in math because of it. Now, can you guess at all? I don't know whether you've ever heard of anybody with such habits, but this is 1960 when this is taking place. And the author, Wesley King, is writing about something that happened in his own life. He had obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. But at the time, it wasn't something that anybody ever talked about. And so it was just his own secret. And that's how Daniel is in this novel. He doesn't tell his parents what's going on. He doesn't tell his friends. He doesn't tell his teachers. He doesn't think anyone will understand. And they'll just think he's totally weird. And so he spends a lot of time hiding and keeping his secret to himself. A lot of times he doesn't get any sleep at night because he spends so much time folding his towels and patting his face a certain number of times and turning off and on the light a certain number of times. And if he doesn't get it all just right, he starts over. It's actually very painful and well described. Now, things start turning in the book when a few things happen. First of all, it seems that the football team needs Daniel. He's only in middle school, but there is a football team here. And he gets a note in his locker that says, "I need your help." Signed, a fellow star child, whatever that means. It seems as if Daniel isn't going to be able to hide from people anymore. He's not going to be able to keep his secret about how weird he is. And things are going to start changing for him in this social issues book that turns into a really exciting and suspenseful mystery. 12-year-old Jessie is spending her summer at the New England seashore with her father, her sister, and her brother. And her mother isn't with them, so she has a little bit more free time and flexibility than she usually does because her mother is like the stricter parent. And so every day when her father works and her brother and her sister go to the beach, Jessie instead goes to this pond that is behind their rental house. Their rental house is down a deep, shady lane where hardly anybody ever goes. And nobody ever goes to the pond that's behind their house. It's called Quicksand Pond. There's no beach there. There's just really thick weeds and grasses that you have to push through to even get to the water. But Jessie likes it. She likes the peace. And one day when she goes through these weeds and grasses, she finds a raft. And it looks old, but it looks okay. And she gets on it and she starts paddling around the pond. And when she's doing that, she doesn't see or hear anybody else. She does see and hear birds. She hears fish jumping in and out of the pond, and it's very peaceful, and there's something about it she just likes. Until one day, something happens. She goes a little bit further. This is a really large pond. She goes a little bit further than usual, and suddenly she does hear something. She hears a man's voice. He sounds angry, and he's yelling, "Get back here. I'll show you how to behave." And she hears a girl's voice. She sounds scared. "Stay away from me," the girl is yelling. Then she sees the shadows of a girl running and a larger shadow of a man running after the girl. And Jessie's terrified. She knows she's witnessing something really bad. "Stay away from me," the girl keeps yelling over and over. Finally, she can hear the girl pushing through the weeds and then trampling through the water, and she knows the girl has come into the pond. The father is still yelling. He's threatening about what he's going to do when he gets his hands on this girl. And then Jessie, who's totally frozen on her raft, sees the girl come around and then swim right over to Jessie and her raft. "Let me on," she says to Jessie. Jessie can't believe what she's witnessing, but of course she does let the girl onto the raft. And the two of them sit totally silently. Jessie at one point says, "Who is that?" And the girl says, "Be quiet, be quiet." So they sit there totally quietly until they hear the man eventually wander off. The girl says, "Okay, thank you. I think he's gone now." And Jessie says, "Who was that?" And the girl, whose name is Terry, says, "Who do you think? That was my father." Jessie and Terry form a friendship after this. And every day they meet at the pond. They do some exploring. They fix the raft. And all that time, somebody is watching them. There is one very big house on the pond. And there's an old lady who lives there. She lives in the same house where the very bad thing happened more than 70 years ago. The very bad thing that only she witnessed. As Jessie gets used to this summer vacation, she starts to think. She was really hoping for a peaceful, quiet time where she could sort of unwind from everything that happened to her this year at school. But the more time she spends on Quicksand Pond, the more she becomes suspicious of the town and wondering how involved she should really be with this girl from the troubled family at the far side of the pond. I loved this book. I just read it recently. I would say it's best for readers who already like to read and are looking for something a little bit different and maybe a little bit more intense. And it's called Quicksand Pond by Janet Taylor Liesel. She's written some other books that I also really love. Alabama Moon is a favorite every year. It's a popular choice. And it's about a kid named Moon who lives in Alabama with his father, but he does not have a typical life. His father is a survivalist, which means he likes to live off the land. They hunt and kill their own food. They make their own clothes. They build their own shelter. They don't go to school, or Moon doesn't go to school. His father doesn't have a regular job. They spend all their time taking care of themselves. And they don't have their money in a bank account. They don't pay taxes. They're just not part of society. At the beginning of the novel, Moon's father gets his leg caught in a bear trap, which is obviously a very serious thing. And most people would immediately go to the hospital, but not Moon's father. He doesn't, again, want to be part of society. He's not going to go to a modern hospital. And so he just tells Moon to take him back to their cabin. And Moon tries to sort of care for his wound, but it immediately, or very soon anyway, becomes infected. And Moon's father figures out it's not going to get better. The infection is going to spread through his entire body. And Moon is like, "Please, Dad, let's go to the hospital." And his father says, "No, I'm not going to the hospital." So after a day or two of Moon trying to take care of his dad says to him, and I'm going to read out loud from the book a little bit. I'm on page 19. So this is all the very beginning of the book. He says, I'm not going to get better. What? I'm not going to get better. You're going to die? He nodded. I felt my stomach twist. Tonight? No, but soon. Something like this leg won't heal. How soon? I don't know. But I don't understand. Well, think about it. Think about a deer that breaks its leg. What happens? But you're not a deer, I yelled. There's no difference. We're all animals. I felt like I would get sick on the floor. What will I do? He's in the woods all by himself. That's what I'm going to tell you. Pa said I would have to find somebody else to live with. He said there were many other people like us all over the country. He said there were more now than ever, but most of them were out west in Montana, Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. Alaska was even better. A man could still make a homestead in Alaska. He could still get to places where no one would find him. I'd have to find my way there. But how? I asked. You'll figure it out. You can't rely on me anymore. Just remember the things I taught you. Take cover during the day and move at night. Use the stars. Don't trust anybody. Soon after that, Moon's father does die. And now Moon is by himself in the woods with his father's body. The first thing he does is bury him. And then he doesn't do what probably all of us would do, which is go get help, find the police, tell somebody, the situation that he's in. His father has taught him not to trust anybody and not to trust society. And so he does what his father told him to do. He starts making his way on foot at night by himself west across the country to find these places that his father says there's still people like them that he can find to live with. Really great adventure story. And they actually made a movie out of it that I haven't seen, but I have seen the poster for. Alabama Moon by Watt Key. Maybe some of you have been reading Deep Water this year. It's a book that I've book talked quite a bit about the girl and the boy who are caught in the water and the sharks and all that. This is by the same author, although it's an earlier novel. Okay, now I'm going to try to speed talk about 4 really great books. One is called Fish in a Tree. Maybe some of you have already read it. It's been very popular for several years. It's about 6th grade Allie Nickerson, who cannot read. She has been to 7 schools in 7 years. 7 schools. The same thing happens at every school, which is that she's too embarrassed to let anybody know that she can't read. And so she tries to distract everybody. In class, she tries to disrupt the class. She tries to anger the teacher and even get sent out of class if that needs to happen. If she gets sent to the principal, so be it. At least she's in the principal's office instead of in class where everybody could be finding out her secret, which is that she can't read. So at the beginning of this book, she goes to a 7th school and she tries to do all her usual disruption, etc. She thinks that if anyone finds out she can't read, nobody will like her and everybody will think that she's stupid. However, the teacher that she has at this school, a substitute teacher, a long-term sub called Mr. Daniel, doesn't seem to be falling for her usual tricks. He won't be distracted, and he will not let the class be disrupted, and he doesn't just send her to the principal. In fact, he seems to be paying more and more attention to her instead of less and less, which is exactly what Allie doesn't want. She's managed to keep her secret for this many years, but is Mr. Daniel going to be the one to find out how stupid she really is? It's called Fish in a Tree and is by Linda Milady Hunt. She's written a lot of other popular ones, including One for the Murphys, which is another book that you could read for this unit. Now, I'm not sure if I'm still recording because my Wi-Fi, I think I still am, so I'm going to keep talking. In Schooled, Capricorn Anderson, I don't know if you guys can see the cover, it has a peace sign and a bus. I'm actually going to put the book right here, is a homeschooled kid. He lives with his grandmother, who is a total hippie. Not sure how much you guys even know about the hippie sensibility, but she doesn't believe in owning private property. She thinks everybody should share everything and that there's enough on this earth for everyone to have food, for everyone to have a place to live. And so she and her grandson live on a commune where everybody shares everything. And it's a very peace-loving society. And, Cap is happy there. However, and he has long hair and he wears tie-dye and shoes that his grandmother made from bark or something. And however, at the beginning of the book, his grandmother falls out of a tree. Now she's not fatally wounded. However, she's hurt bad enough that she has to go to rehab and she has to go to the hospital, and she's not going to be around to take care of Cap every day anymore. And so Cap has to go live with another family and go to school. Now, this kid has never been to school before. He's never had a locker. He's never eaten in a cafeteria. He doesn't even understand why would you have a locker? what's yours is mine and what's mine is yours, right? Why are we locking things away from each other? He doesn't understand the way that kids interact with each other. So can this kid, Cap, who has always lived on this commune and been homeschooled, survive middle school? This is by Gordon Corman, who needs no introduction. He's written so many great novels. He has a great ability to mix humor with, real feeling. And that's Gould. Okay, Shark Girl. Shark Girl is a novel written in verse, which means that the pages don't have too many words on them. So you can get through this book very quickly. It also has a sequel, and a lot of people come and read the sequel. It also says up here, an Oprah's Book Club Kids Reading List selection, which means that it will forever be in print, because if Oprah likes your book, that's the best thing that could happen to a novelist. So let's say it's the summer and you go to the beach. Now, what's supposed to happen when you go to the beach, theoretically, is you're supposed to have a great relaxing day. Maybe build a sandcastle, maybe lie in the sun, maybe read a book and fall asleep under an umbrella. And when you leave at the end of the day, you leave with sort of a relaxed smile and maybe a suntan, or maybe not if you wore enough sunscreen. Depends. What's not supposed to happen is that you're supposed to get attacked by a shark. You're not supposed to lose part of your leg. You're not supposed to wake up from a coma in a hospital instead of going home with your parents in a car. And this is exactly what happens to the main character of this book, Jane Ironwood. She goes for a swim, she gets attacked by a shark, and not only that, somebody films it. And so it's online, this attack, the sound of her screams, the blood in the water, the screaming of the panicked people on the beach witnessing it. Shark Girl is about the day of the attack, yes, but more than that, it is about Jane's recovery, her return to school, and the way that she deals with not really being known as Jane anymore, but being known as that girl from the video, the girl who got bitten, the girl without the leg, otherwise Shark Girl. Who is she now? Okay, Yellow Star. Okay, this is a very serious book. But again, this is also written in verse, so there's not that many words on each page. All that means is, it doesn't mean that the book's any easier. These novels in verse sometimes get a reputation as being easier to read. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're a little harder because it's sort of like poetry and you have to spend a little more time thinking about the words. However, you can usually read them a lot more quickly than another book. So if you're not the fastest reader or if you don't have a lot of time, sometimes novels in verse are a really good option. Or maybe you just like the format. I love novels in verse. I read pretty much every one that comes into the library. This one is historical fiction. Maybe you can see the cover. The girl has this Star of David on her coat. I'm not sure how much you guys have learned about the Holocaust during World War II and what happened to the Jews in Europe under, the terrible power of Adolf Hitler, who actually, under his reign, he exterminated, that is, murdered 6 million Jewish people, men, women, and children. Sylvia Perlmutter, that's a little girl. She's a real little girl. This is a historical photograph, is one of the Jews who lived in Czechoslovakia when Hitler's army invaded. And she actually survived the Holocaust. And this is her story. It is fiction, but it's almost all real. It's based very closely on Sylvia's story. And Jennifer Roy, who wrote the book, interviewed her for this novel. This little girl, Sylvia, when World War II began, she was only 4 years old. And when it ended, she was 10. So she grew up with, the fear of Hitler in her bones. At the beginning of the war, in her city, there were 233,000 Jews living. 233,000. Now, at the end of the war, from her city, there were 800 Jews left. So from 233,000 to 800. And of those 800 surviving Jews, 12 of them were children. So only 12 children survived from her city, the Holocaust. And she was one of them. It talks about the incredible lengths that her family went to keep her alive, of all the, just random acts of luck, and of why she was one of the miraculous survivors. And not only that, about what it was like when the war ended, having her whole community destroyed and most of her family gone. It's a heartbreaking but absolutely fascinating story that I would recommend to anyone, and it is called The Yellow Star. Efrain Divided is the last book I read. I finished it yesterday, and it's a very simple but powerful story. It starts out, it's about this boy named Efrain who is in seventh grade. And it starts out like a regular school story, maybe about social drama. There are student council elections coming up, and Efrain's best friend, David, is running. David is kind of like cool. He always has the latest devices and the best clothes. And he's making promises such as he's going to get better food in the cafeteria and eliminate homework, things that like no student council president can ever actually get done. And Efrain likes working on the campaign, and he thinks the whole thing's fun and funny, but he secretly suspects that Jennifer, who's the other student running, would do a better job than David. Efrain and Jennifer have something in common. They are both Mexican-American children of undocumented parents. Efrain's father and mother are from Mexico, and they came into the United States illegally. That is, they don't have the proper documents to be living and working here. They work very hard and they take good care of their family. Their 3 children are American citizens, but they live in daily fear of maybe somebody finding out who they really are. And so they sort of try to fly under the radar. They keep their heads down and they do what they're supposed to do. And that's true for Efrain too. He gets good grades and he doesn't draw too much attention to himself. For instance, he would never run for student council president. But they do think like, oh boy, we really need to be careful because no matter how careful we are, something could happen and we could be arrested. And one day the worst happens. Efrain comes home from school and there's no food on the stove. The radio isn't playing the way it usually is, and his mother isn't home. At first he tries not to assume the worst, but as time passes and his father gets home and his 2 little siblings get home and his mother doesn't come home, they start to grow very concerned. And finally they do hear what their greatest fears have always been, which is that their mother, Efrain's mother, was caught up in an ICE raid and she has been deported. That is, she's been sent out of the United States. And now she is in Tijuana, Mexico, and she is not allowed to come back. Now the whole family's life is turned upside down. Efrain's father has to start working around the clock to try to save money to somehow get his wife back over the border, if it's even possible. And Efrain now has to pitch in a lot with his little brother and sister, with the house, and his grades start falling and life really isn't easy. And there's no one he feels he can really talk to about it because he's always been taught to sort of like keep the family business a secret. So for instance, his favorite teacher who keeps reaching out to him, he doesn't feel like he can tell him because what if somebody finds out about his father and his father gets taken away too? It's just not safe. And so Efrain is sort of silently struggling and falling apart. Now, in the face of all of this, in the face of worrying whether he's ever going to see his mother again, etc., the student council elections don't seem so important anymore. But somehow the tension and fear around deportations is even infiltrating the student council elections. And Efrain has a lot of questions, not just about his parents, but about school. Who should he vote for? And can something as seemingly insignificant as a school election actually make a difference, even if it's a tiny difference? This is a very heartfelt and stirring novel, and it very much concerns what's going on in the world right now. And so it's very relevant. And I think that it's probably, a must read for most students who want to feel some empathy into what it's like for a child who has parents who are undocumented and the daily fear that's sort of always there. Anyway, that one's called Efrain Divided. Thank you for listening to all my book talks. Over and out from Miss Ryan. Keep reading.
Bizarre celebrations. Let's forget who forget, why forget where. We'll have bizarre celebrations. I play the satyr in Cyprus, you the bribing strip bear. Let's pretend we don't exist. Let's pretend we're in Antarctica. Let's pretend we don't exist.